There's no etiquette about taking things from people's baskets in a grocery store. It doesn't happen. In that situation, the person who's transacting with the most immediate proximity to actualizing what the intention of the service is, in my opinion, has the right.
I feel that every position that I have regarding the situation can be substantiated by both facts, by the video evidence, by the testimony of the boy, and obviously my other extrapolations through inductive or deductive logic. So if you're telling me that there's something else that's driving me, please point out to me where we disagree, and then I'll explain to you logically, rationally, why I'm right. Yeah, you said you sound like you had some legitimate disagreements with me regarding this Citibike Karen situation.
Yeah, for sure, man. First of all, I while I was waiting for this call to happen, I was just perusing because I'd never seen any of your stuff. You got an ear, my friend. You play the piano very well. I'm a musician myself.
Nice.
Produce records and all of that jazz. But yeah, I was impressed. Your earlier stuff, you look way more excited about life than you do now.
What do you mean?
Well, the video I saw, it was a very different character. I don't even know how to explain it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Of course.
You seem to be genuinely into just your music. Even the small clips that I saw of your gaming, you were like animated and alive. When I see you now, you're not that.
It depends. Like, so, I still actively do music, right? Like that's what I actually do for a living. And I think I'm always going to be particularly passionate about music. I think I'm passionate about whatever it is I'm doing. I'm passionate about debate. I'm passionate about politics. I'm passionate about music. I was passionate about scholastics. I'm just passionate. If I do something, I'm going to do it to like the umpteenth degree. And so I think in the same sense, when I started like getting into political activism and becoming aware about politics, I became particularly passionate about that. And I am particularly passionate about that.
Right.
Yeah,
you think? Yeah, but dude, I hear you. I'm not to laugh. I'm just fascinated. Like, I just dig people. But don't you think there's a different character to the way that you express that passion, perhaps? Like now, you seem angrier. I don't know if that's like an unfair characterization. Like a lot of your passion doesn't translate as that joyful, just the short clips that I saw person. I feel like that person's kind of taken a back seat. Is that an unfair characterization?
No, I don't think so. But I think let's analyze it. I don't have anything to be angry about when it comes to music. I love it. It's just something that I enjoy. Yeah. It's something that I get to do for fun, that I've always been really passionate about. And I get to express myself the way that I want to, make the songs that I want to hear, that I love. It's just always been part of my identity. There's nothing to be angry about. Gaming, it's not too much to be angry about. Like, I was at the top of my game, literally beating people, taking their money all around the freaking country. I was sponsored by a company that generated $250 million in revenue a year, flying about 20 times within the country, just seeing different places, spending time in New York, spending time in Philadelphia, spending time in Chicago, going to Arizona for a weekend, going to Vegas on a regular basis. And so I'm just literally traveling and just doing all of those things. So of course you're not going to see anger there, because I was literally one of the highest paid sponsored players in the country, in the world, for fighting games, to be honest. So if that's the case, then there's not a lot of anger there. But I think expecting me to be the same person who's enjoying music when I'm literally trying to debate racists about the systemic oppression that's affecting Black people, and expecting me to be jovial when I see ongoing, continued oppression, and then saying like, well, yeah, why are you not the same happy guy that's just loving his life playing video games when you're trying to contend with psychopaths about the racism that Black people are facing in the country? I don't know how you would expect me to be the same there. Especially when I'm literally having to deal with people that are giving people credence, that are doing atrocious things to 17-year-old boys who they're trying to paint as a man and intentionally ignoring all of the facts and everything in order to justify this overt, egregious act by this freaking Karen, and I'm supposed to be happy about that. Why would that make sense? Or when I'm talking about like systemic oppression, or I'm talking about police officers killing folks, like, and people are literally justifying it, or you got random vigilantes killing people in subways, and I'm supposed to say, no, totally. I'm so happy to be having this conversation with a person who's willing to deny the humanity of the individual who was murdered as if that was justified because he was a bad person, so in some sort. Like, that's crazy to me. No, of course I'm not gonna be the same guy.
Perfect. I think you've answered a lot in just not just what you said, but also the way that you said it. My initial reading is exactly that. Like, your perspective is necessarily tainted, right? Because by your own kind of admittance that you carry with you in the analysis of this particular situation, things that you feel strongly about for good and bad reasons, but most importantly, some part of you is being led by your emotional reaction to the situation. Is that true?
No, I think I'm generally driven by logic. That's typically how I process things. Is rational.
No. Stop. No,
stop me.
Stop.
Okay, I stopped.
You just said, you just went on a whole thing, which I agree with, by the way, for the most part, that, there is no way for you to process any other emotion other than the few that relate to anger about the situation of Black people and these particular boys. You admitted that, right? Am I wrong to say that?
If you're asking,
so don't then come now. So no, I'm driven by logic now.
Okay, so let me respond. Okay, so it's really simple. If you present things to me in an emotional framework, then I'm going to explain to you from that emotional framework that you presented to me what makes the most sense. And unfortunately, given that you now put the framework of emotions, then no, I cannot possibly be happy when I'm discussing the murder of George Floyd. That can't be. That doesn't mean that I'm processing it from a place. Hold on. That doesn't mean that I'm processing.
Right.
That isn't. Hold on. Hey, when you ask me to wait, I wait. So you just gotta hush when I'm talking too. So I got you. So when you're asking me, when I'm processing something that's atrocious, then I'm probably not going to be particularly jovial. Now that doesn't mean that I'm operating from a place of emotion. It's just that the emotion that's going to be exuding here, the thing that I'm going to be presenting here, is not going to be a happy-go-lucky jovial guy. Now if you have me sitting in front of a piano doing my very first love, then yeah, I'm going to be that person. But I'm a passionate person about whatever I do. And I think there's an appropriate passion that's going to follow this sort of thing when we're talking about our beliefs about oppression that isn't going to be jovial. But that doesn't mean that I'm ruled by emotion. It just means that the emotion that's going to be present, right, is going to be appropriate to the situation. And there's no way to be jovial talking about the murder of a Black man. There's no way to be jovial talking about that. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, my friend. Have you ever heard of the expression an unimpassioned jury? Have you ever heard that?
No.
So I'm from South Africa. Okay. A lot of times when we talk about our judicial system, what we're looking for in our judges is unimpassioned jurors, kind of thing. Someone, dispassionate. You might have heard it as dispassionate from the States.
Oh, sure.
We are necessarily controlling for exactly what you're describing. Do you understand?
Okay.
The reason this is important is because if we do not look at situation and in our analysis remove the passion from the other half of the equation, which is evidence, logic. What we are doing is we are allowing the passion to dilute whatever we could learn by looking at the other half of the puzzle. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying. So then instead of us having this conversation more broadly about whether or not I'm too passionate to be objective in these circumstances, I would rather, since you have my content, you've looked at some of my content, and you've heard my arguments pertaining to this situation, I would prefer for you to actually tell me specifically where you feel that my passion or emotion are overriding logic. I feel that every position that I have regarding the situation can be substantiated by both facts, by the video evidence, by the testimony of the boy, and obviously my other extrapolations through inductive or deductive logic. So if you're telling me that there's something else that's driving me, please point out to me where we disagree, and then I'll explain to you logically, rationally, why I'm right.
Okay, let's go for it. Let's see how far we get. I have no idea where we might net out, but let's go for it and see where we go. I'm gonna start maybe at the what I think is the sharper end of the stick, in the sense that we're gonna work our way backwards from the last kind of couple of things that I heard you say, which kind of centered around the moral condemnation of Connery.
Okay.
You said, I won't remember and I don't want to mischaracterize anything you're saying. I don't remember your words verbatim, but it was something along the lines of like, she is a morally bad person, more or less, right?
I wasn't saying that she was
well,
No, that's not what I said. What I said was, I think it's an immoral act to take something that was currently possessed by another person. Okay. I think that's immoral.
I can meet you there. You didn't say she was immoral, but you're saying that I can meet you there. Fine.
Well, she did the
what
act,
evidence
so that
do you have?
Specifically was immoral. Yeah.
Yes. But what evidence do you have of this immoral, like the act being immoral?
Well, again, it would be somewhat circumstantial, but it would be this. Obviously, fact number one, the boy obviously was a regular user of the bike and understood that it was a rare bike.
No, please. Okay, sorry. We have to kind of stick to what we're talking about, please, because I'm gonna have a hard time.
I am. I'm building a point.
You're talking. No. I want you to address the act.
I'm sorry for letting you interrupt me there. Listen, I'm going to explain to you where my positioning is, where I'm deriving the morality from, so you can understand what I'm getting at. You interrupted me at the beginning of me speaking. You have no idea what point I was going to make. It is obviously pertinent to the thing that you're asking. You just have to be patient enough to listen to it. There will never be a time in this conversation where I'm not directly responding to a question that you're asking. Now, sometimes you might feel it's being verbose, but the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to make sure that I'm completely explaining my position so you understand where I'm coming from, so we don't have to sit here and itemize all of these like individual small debates. So just be patient while I explain myself, and you'll see how it directly pertains to the morality of her actions and why I feel it was wrong, okay? Because that was the question you were asking me, and that's what I was getting into.
I'm willing to go along with you, but bearing in mind, if you go long, it's going to be very difficult for me to address anything you're saying.
It won't be
My request is...
I only spoke a little bit there, and it wasn't particularly long, and it was always going to be always going to be pertinent. And
go for it.
And furthermore, guess what? You do the same thing that I do when I'm talking to people.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and open up a WordPad. Write down notes if you feel like something is, if I'm making too many points, which I don't think will happen. Write down on Notepad. So if you disagree, then you can go ahead and disagree, and then I'll address whatever it is I'm talking about. But I'm explaining myself and answering a question that you asked me. So now, what I was saying is, obviously the boy had a very long history with these bikes, right? But due to the fact that he was a Citibike angel, due to the fact that he had, he said that he uses a bike regularly to go to school, etc., etc., etc. With all of that being said, that bike that he was looking for, he was particularly aware that it was coveted. He walked around 20 minutes looking for that bike. With all of that being said, I would imagine him having used that bike and checked it out multiple times prior to interacting with Karen, that he would recognize that this bike, if left unattended, would likely be picked up by another person. Because of that, I believe that the boy was likely standing by the bike as his friend was seen sitting on another bike when they first started the video, which means that he likely recognized that he needed to maintain possession of the bike or else someone would claim it. So with that being said, if he was actually claiming the bike based off of the things that I just laid out to you, then it would seem likely that she went up to the bike in accordance with his testimony and scanned the bike while he was in possession of it, which would be incredibly immoral because he had possession of the bike, so she effectively stole it from him. that wasn't particularly
Okay,
verbose, you see?
yeah, it wasn't that verbose, but I could have told you. That's why I was trying to stop you. None of this has got anything to do with our perception of the moral weight of Comrie's actions. There was no way she could have known this guy's entire history with bikes and all of those things.
She doesn't
But
have
he
to.
was in a mindset to, what she was in the mindset to do is exercise her consumer rights by, if she saw a bike that was docked, she is well within her rights to try and pay for it and go off and be on her way. She had every right to do that. Now, if you have that mindset, tell me, point out at which point an intentional act of malice was undertaken.
As I laid out to you in the previous exposition, if he had possession of the bike at the time, then it is not within her consumer right to take the bike. We used an analogy in the previous conversation in the comment where you left the comment on the video. If I'm in a grocery store and I take things and put them into my shopping cart, if someone steals that thing from me because of the fact that it is now my possession, even if I haven't paid for it yet, that is considered stealing. In the same sense, even if I haven't directly booked this thing out, hold on. In the same sense, it's not irrelevant. I'm drawing an analogy. Please stop interrupting, because I won't do that to you either.
It's broken.
Please stop interrupting, and I won't do that to you either. So in the same sense, when I go up to a bicycle, if I go and put my hand on the bicycle, that is me exercising my possession of said bicycle. For someone to go and reach over me and scan the bicycle that I have possession of, at that point would seem to me to be the same type of thievery as the person stealing something from my cart. And if you disagree, please explain to me where these two things are different, and I won't interrupt you while you do that. And in the future, please stop interrupting me.
Okay, cool. My bad. I don't mean to interrupt. I hope you're not getting the impression that I'm doing it deliberately. I just speak up at the time, but it's probably not very good.
Yep.
But as per my worries, that like you bring up like things that are completely irrelevant, right? This grocery store analogy is broken, but I actually don't even want to waste my time with that. What I want to do is kind of point out like something else. If you're from the perspective of Citibike, the company that administers and buys all the equipment and it maintains it, in their estimation, if this guy, let's say I grant you that was close by the bike with his hand on it, but he had not actually paid to be using it, do you think that the company would consider the bike to be in his possession? Or would they prefer somebody who's willing to pay for it at that time to possess it?
So you're not going to engage with my analogy, which is kind of crazy because that's not conducive of a decent conversation, but it's okay. I'm going to answer your question, and then I'm just going to go ahead and lose my tolerance a little bit. And each time as we move in this direction, then the conversation is going to go off the wheels, and I'm not going to want to talk to you much further because it doesn't sound like you're being good faith when you just choose to completely dismiss what I think is a completely one-to-one analogy and then just move on to another question. That sounds like you're pivoting and digressing and not truly engaging with me. I don't need to hear your explanation for why you're choosing to do what I consider to be particularly rude. No explanation is going to suffice here. It is just not good conversation to refuse to engage with the person that you're speaking to the thing that they just directly said. Now, moving forward to the thing that you just said, do I think that Citibike would see him as the owner? I would imagine that they probably have a policy that makes all of the sense in the world. The first person to arrive to the bike would be the rightful user. Because, for example, just like how we have at a stop sign, anyone can drive on the road, but we have etiquette for who goes first when you arrive at a stop sign. In the same sense, I would imagine that it would become first come, first served. If I arrive at the bike first, then I have the right to check out the bike before the other person does. I would imagine that's the etiquette. I would imagine that's the way things work. So I would say for her to reach over a person in possession of that thing and to scan it would probably be problematic, and Citibike would see that as problematic as well.
Okay, I'm gonna try and explain to you. I didn't mean to be dismissive. I feel like you're this that emotion thing you were talking about earlier on. Like I am having a good faith conversation. I just didn't think your analogy was necessary in order to get to the meat of what I'm trying to get at by addressing the actual situation. So my bad if I offended you. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I can tell you why. If you're interested to hear why I don't think it's analogous at all. But I'd rather actually just stick to the subject. So it's up to you. You let me know what you want me to address. your analogy, or just keep the conversation going forward?
So let me explain. I feel like a lot of times when you're having disagreements with people, you need to figure out wherein the disagreement lies. For example, the other day when I was talking to Tom Foolery and I gave this analogy, he said he believed that the second someone paid for the object, it was rightfully theirs, even if it was scummy with what they were doing. So then that's when I understood, oh, that's where we disagreed. So I had to point out to him, and he was saying that it wasn't illegal. So I had to point out to him, it is indeed illegal to steal something that somebody else has principled possession of. And so in that case, what I was explaining to him, then I was able to see our disagreement. The reason why I presented the analogy to you was to see if you disagreed with that principle. If you disagree with that principle, then I can say,
okay.
So that's why. So that was the purpose of the analogy. Now you can say that the analogy doesn't hold up, which is where I would like to know where it doesn't. But so if the analogy does have a purpose, it does have a value, and it would be always good to engage with the analogy. Lastly, I don't care if you feel like or if you're intending to dismiss me. It is in fact objectively dismissive to completely say I'm not going to engage with the thing you presented and then move on to something else that I would like to talk about. By definition, that is dismissive regardless of your intention. If you want a good faith conversation, being dismissive is not a way to go about doing that. So you can adjust yourself and actually have good faith conversation or continue on about your way.
Hey man, it's your stream. I'm not gonna hold you hostage. If you don't want me here, then it's cool. I'm not like, you can tell, I'm not trying to do anything bad, my homie. But I can't address why I think that. Okay, it's fine. Even if you perceive it as bad, I'm not. You must just know that's not what I'm trying to do.
I don't care.
But your analogy, I would say that it doesn't hold up because there's a difference between a service provider and the way that they engage with their customers and physical goods. When you talk about things being stolen inside the basket, it's got like those things don't talk to one another at all. The closer kind of analogy, just to demonstrate why I think yours is broken, a closer analogy you might play out in a context of like an Uber or something that's more or less along the lines of a service provider, because none of those people own that bike in that entire transaction. It is impossible to steal it. Listen, you can only steal it from the company that makes it. So that's why I thought, and I didn't mean to sound dismissive, but I just didn't agree with it being relevant at all. And I wanted just to get to the heart of the matter. And if you're happy for me to move on to that, or if you'd like a chance to respond to what I just said, you let me know.
Okay, so to respond to what you just said, you do own what is called principled possession. You have the principle of possession, which is about the intent to possess something, which can be displayed in various ways. And once someone chooses to do that, then at that point, another person taking said thing, which is currently possessed by another person through the principle of possession, is in the wrong, right? Like, so we have laws for these kind of things specifically for that reason. So again, you can do that with other services, or you can do that with objects. You have the intent to possess property. You can have the intent to possess things like as a tenant. You can have the intent to possess something that can be leased out. For example, a taxi cab, right? You can get sued over things like that. You do have the intent to possess things, and if somebody does something, if you're petty enough, you could actually sue them for that. Now, obviously, there can be like things where things go too far, like somebody had the intent to possess a wave, which you can't have ownership of, but other things you can, right? Like a Citibike, like a taxi cab, like a blockbuster movie. So, okay, fine, and we'll shift the analogy to like, I don't know, a video rental place. If I pick up an object with the intention to rent it, and then somebody snatches it from my hand and then goes and scans it themselves, guess what? At that point, they have now stolen that from me. How would that be substantially different from the Citibike incident?
I guess so. What I'm trying to do is get to an analogy where there are comparable exchanges and behavior. Not. Just let me finish what I'm saying. So you spoke a lot about etiquette. There is no etiquette about taking things from people's baskets in a grocery store. It doesn't happen. There's no etiquette in the video store for like a thing that's in your hand. If you try to take that thing from somebody, a fight probably ensue, whether it's a verbal altercation of it would go that direction, because there's no There's no situation where you should be doing that in any case. That's why I think they're not comparable. If you want, I'm okay with playing it out along the lines of principal positions in similar things that you can draw comparisons in behavior. Hailing a cab, as an example, and Uber, as an example, where at some point you're going to have two customers trying to attain a service at more or less the same time, and there are certain behaviors that are implied, or like there's an expectation of who must get it. So for example, if I call a cab and it stops in front of you and me, and we've just finished our conversation on a bad note, and you hate me or whatever the case may be, the taxi kind of stops next to us, and you're still fumbling around your pockets for money, and I have my cash out. In that situation, the person who's transacting with the most immediate proximity to actualizing what the intention of the service is, in my opinion, has the right. Now, if you can stand in my way, not presenting your money or anything like that, you can stand in my way, at which point is more or less what was happening between those kids and Conry. That's why I think we should look at it in those dimensions, right? So and in that situation, it feels like we can explore an analogous situation, but with similar dimensions, right? Okay. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Okay, thank you. So now that's exactly, you just beautifully demonstrated why these analogies are so proper. You just explained to me where we disagree, because you believe if we both were going for a taxi and I arrived at the taxi first, while I fumbled with my money, if another person decided, hey, I have my money available right now, that they would have the right to be able to get the taxi first. And that's where the disagreement is. That's the beauty of an analogy. Rather than us arguing past each other in situations.
That's the value of a good analogy.
Okay, you're interrupting me. You're interrupting me yet again. So anyway, so that's the value of the analogy. And now I understand. And that's where we're going to go ahead and agree to disagree. Obviously, and legally, thankfully, I'm in the right here. Legally, the person who arrives first is the first person who has the right to the service. Now, the only way that the other second person can then become the rightful user of said cab is if the taxi driver was to say, hey, you're taking too long, I'm going to work with the other person. If that happened, then the second person would then be the person able to use the taxi. But until that happens, legally, because I arrived at the taxi first, I have the legal right to the taxi. Just like in the grocery store. Legally, I have the right to the thing. Now, if I grabbed a bottle of alcohol and the cashier says to me, hey, you don't have your ID, I'm not going to sell to you. At that point, now another person can then grab that alcohol and say, good, I'm the legal tender, right? Aside from that person, aside from the one of the other parties legally saying, hey, no, we're no longer honoring your thing, the etiquette is the responsibility of the first come, first serve. Secondly, the other thing that you talked about, oh, there is no etiquette for these things. There is etiquette for these things. It is legally deemed shoplifting if a person steals something from another cart. But
how often does that happen? How often does that happen? Oh my God.
Or don't interrupt me when I'm talking, just like I'm not interrupting you when you're talking. You keep doing it. It is intentional at this point. I am taking it as disrespect. If you want this conversation to continue, we can continue it in a decent way, or we can end the conversation. Don't interrupt me when I'm talking like I haven't done for you. Or they consider it either theft or shoplifting. There is etiquette. It is a legal thing. And it does happen, especially on places like Black Friday. We watch literal riots every single year during that holiday. So the idea that it never happens is ridiculous. And if it never happened, there would be no law about it. The fact of the matter is there is law, which means there is etiquette. In the same sense, there can be both legal and social etiquette. And I don't think there's a single person here who doesn't believe that socially the etiquette is first come, first serve. So therefore, because the boy already had possession of the bike, for her to rent that bike at that point would have been bad etiquette. But if you disagree with that, then at that point, now we see where the issue is, and I don't even know how we continue the conversation.
Oh, okay. So in your mind, this I don't even want to go there. Can we do so? I want to back up to a few sentences before. You said something super interesting. You said the only time that you would think that in that taxi cab scenario I laid out, where you think it would be okay, is if the taxi driver said, "Hey man, you're wasting my time. I want to transact with Gabelo, peace." You said that you would be okay with that, right?
Of course, because at that
Did
point,
I hear that wrong?
Yes, because at that point, then the taxi cab driver has refused the service of the other person.
Okay, cool.
Absent that statement from that taxi cab driver, any way that person did that would be inappropriate at that point.
Okay, so let's do something novel. Let's use our imaginations here. Let's put the equivalent of a taxi driver in that situation, some kind of like marshal, or let's imagine that the technology wasn't like automatic or automated, and there had to be somebody to physically grant you access to the bike. Let's put that person in the middle of that situation, right? And they decide, much like the taxi driver, who they want to then continue with the service. Would it be the guy who's just leaning against the bike, preventing another paying customer from accessing the bike? Or would it be this new customer who's showing a willingness to do the transaction immediately? Who do you think they'd side with?
I don't know for sure, because it depends. If this kid is a regular user and shows that he uses the bikes on a regular basis, I could imagine them wanting to show loyalty to the kid who uses it more frequently because he's a Citibike angel, or because of the fact that he uses it literally daily to go to school, or that he uses it for hours at a time, even on the weekends or even on non-school days. So maybe they might side with the kid. I don't know, but let me just ask you this question that's completely relevant to the situation so that we can get down to the bottom of it. If the boy was standing next to the bike. I'm answering the question. Let me ask you the question. If the boy, you can respond to
that. But I want to continue my line.
I got you. Listen. This is the last time I'm going to tell you. Take down notes and address the things that I'm saying. And if you want another round of the thing that you were saying, you can go ahead and do that when I'm done talking. Do not interrupt me again. Want to talk about emotions? You're sounding OD emotional when you can't contain yourself to stop being rude and interrupting me. This is the last time I will tell you. Moving forward, do not interrupt me again. Now, if the boy would have had, if the boy had possession of the bike, the question I was asking was, if the boy had possession of the bike at that time, if he was standing directly next to the bike and he had intentions of using it and she scanned it while he was doing so, do you feel that she's in the wrong there? Yes or no?
She's definitely in the wrong in that case. 100%. I wouldn't even bat an eyelid. Yeah. Easy give, my man.
So yeah. That's the thing that we said happened.
No, that's not what happened at all. Like, if we read all these articles, come on, don't do that. I want to go back to my line. I'll answer your question, hopefully satisfactorily. You didn't make a good faith case for why, and I don't even think you actually even concluded making a reasonable case for why that marshal who's issuing the access to the bike might side with the 17-year-old. You didn't even say there's a good reason for why they might do that. You kind of went off about, like he uses the bike a lot and all of those things. Let's assume this person has it's like a cab driver. Cab driver doesn't know you from a bar of soap. They're going to look at two customers. One is displaying intent to utilize the service. The other one is preventing that from happening. Who do they side with in that situation?
I would say he displayed intent to utilize the service by the fact that he had rented it for about an hour and a half prior to interacting with Citibike Karen Comrie. So in that case, I would imagine that they would probably side with the boy who had been using the bike up to this point. Lastly, I think I plainly laid out at the very beginning of this conversation why it seemed pretty likely that he was probably standing next to the bike at the time when Comrie came over there and reached over him and scanned it. To say that I didn't explain all of those things, now I understand where we are. You refuse to engage. So let me lay that out for you one more time. What it seemed like was, one, the kid used the bike on a regular basis, which is indicated by the fact that he was a Citibike angel, part of a special group of people who relocate bikes and use them on a regular basis such that he obtains free rides and things like that. Furthermore, the boy said that he uses the bikes regularly to get to school. which of course is 5 days a week in this country. So it seems likely that he was a regular. Furthermore, he also uses the bike at his leisure on a regular basis, according to his own testimony, which would seem consistent with the fact that he was a Citibike angel. Lastly, he used the bike for an hour and a half that day prior to engaging with Comrie and intended to use that same bike to get back home. Not only was he using it, so were his compatriots, the other friends that he was with. They were also using that same bike, his companions, I mean. So if that's the case, all of these things indicate to me that the boy knows that he needs to stand next to the bike in order to make sure that someone doesn't claim it, because the bike is particularly coveted because of the fact that only 20% of those bikes are e-bikes, and he wanted specifically an e-bike, had specifically an e-bike, as did his friend, and he wanted to make sure that he maintained that bike. All of these things are indicative of the fact to me that the boy recognized he needed to remain close to the bike and did so and intended to do so that he could use that bike to get home as in accordance with his testimony. All of this indicates that he's likely telling the truth, that Citibike Karen reached over him and scanned the bike that was in his possession. That's what I laid out to you. Do you disagree with any of that? If you do, which parts?
I mean, I agreed. I granted you that right at the beginning of this conversation, and I even said that, like, I can't remember how I phrased it. Like, I don't necessarily disagree. I don't necessarily agree, but I'll grant you that he was close to the bike, and hence our scenarios are now playing out while he's standing there. So I don't know why you had to go on that like whole 20-minute rant about like something we've already granted. It's okay. What I'm trying to test,
she's wrong then.
No. Did I say that? I don't think
yes,
I
you
said
did.
that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No.
You said, because I told you. I asked you the.
Can I tell you what I just said? Can I tell you what I said?
You can. And then I'll just repeat it anyway.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. And I feel like we're getting bogged down on just like, like weird exchanges. I'm trying to move the conversation forward here, right? I will grant you that he was by the bike. And my issue is he was obstructing another customer from utilizing the bike. I said I'd meet you there. That's the language I use. I said I'll meet you right there for the sake of the conversation. So if we can just take it from that point, you don't have to re-explain all of that. You don't have to explain anything about his past behaviors. I want us to examine, because remember the initial question was about which part of that woman's action had malice in them to the extent that you said the act was immoral. That's what the actual initial question was. So that's why I'm testing that particular thing. Now, your initial assertion was that because she reached over another person to try to get access to a bike, that in and of itself is immoral. And I'm contesting that. Hence the example. There is nothing inherently immoral about her desire to begin her trip, right? If you're not using the bike and there's a scarcity, first of all, the idea that there's a scarcity of these bikes, you know that it also affects other customers, not just that kid, right? You're aware of that fact. So she would respond to that scarcity the same way he did. And they are both equally allowed to respond to that scarcity with the same amount of, I want this bike. It's fair game, right? Just because he's preventing a transaction from happening, it does not automatically mean that he's in the right. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're just wrong. First off, when I asked you very directly if the boy was standing next to the bike with intent to use it and someone reached over him to scan it, would that be wrong? You said unequivocally, yes, that would be wrong. So then I laid out to you specifically all of the evidence that indicates that he was standing next to the bike with intention to use it. Now you're saying, no, I don't think she's wrong, even though I just laid out to you what he was doing, which equaled out to him standing next to the bike with intention to use it. So if that's the case, then you would have to say that she's wrong. Now you're going back.
What do you mean by intention to use it? What do you mean by intention to use it? Because I'm saying, he was standing there. I'm not saying, if you mean he was about to literally swipe his scan the barcode or whatever to activate the service, That's what I mean. If he's literally trying to do that, but that's not the same thing as standing next to the bike. Standing next to the bike does not necessarily mean you have intention to use it. As you said, he was preventing other customers from using it for the fact that these bikes are scarce.
I never said that word.
And but that's the implication. If you're holding on to the bike, if you're holding onto the bike so that you alone can use it, you are de facto preventing other customers from using it. There's no other way to understand.
Yeah, sure there are. Do you believe that the boy intended to use that bike to get home?
Yeah, at some point, 100%.
Okay, so he
doesn't change anything.
So he did have intent to use it with 100% certainty. Then we're in agreement there.
No.
So hold on. So now
can I just explain? Can I answer completely? Please, can I give a complete answer?
I'm going to finish. No, you're interrupting me again.
No, I was answering the question. Please,
you're interrupting me.
Can I finish the question?
You're interrupting me again. I know. Oh my God.
Well,
you can't stop.
I want to finish.
You're interrupting me again. All right, so that's going to be the end of the conversation. I'd like to thank you for participating. You've just displayed that you cannot be civil enough to have the conversation. No. So at that point, we'll go ahead and we'll have to move on, okay? I need you to go ahead and remove yourself. I'll remove you. It's okay. Thank you for trying. Next time, be more civil.